Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm excited to kind of talk to you today about residency competitiveness. And if you want help with your letter of intent, CV, or want to have a call with me, you can go to residencyhelp.com or residency.teachable.com. You can find more information there. So what I want to talk about today is finding out if you are residency competitive. Are you going to have a chance at getting a residency? And the data is very clear. You can go to ASHP Match Stats, put that in Google, and there's a document that says exactly what percentage your school matched at. Now, you want to be careful because there's the match at which students got an interview, and then there's the match after that. So of those that got an interview, what percentage made it? So the best kind of marker is to know of all the people that wanted a residency, how many got it. And there's going to be those that are in the top half and those that are in the lower half. So what I'm going to go over today in this episode is, first I'm going to go over two definitions of competitive. What is it to be a competitive person? And then what is it to be a person in a competitive atmosphere? And second, to kind of bring this home, I'm going to have a soccer analogy. I coach youth soccer and kind of want to talk a little bit about how there's a really good example of what the difference is and how you may not realize that you are only competitive at a certain level. And then the third thing is, what is it that makes you residency competitive? What can you do? How can you find those difficult situations that you need, and how can you get the help that you need? So let's first start with the first two definitions of competitive. A competitive person is someone who wants to succeed and maybe got those A's in undergrad and maybe had that 3.6, 3.8 high PCAT score and those types of things. And they might have ended up at a school that would have taken them if they didn't have those grades, if they had low 2 point something score and they didn't have a PCAT at all. We don't know. But that's a competitive person who really wants to do the very best they can and does so at a high level. A person in a competitive atmosphere is in one of the schools, and I would say the top, we're just talking about residency applications. There's many things that make a school good or bad. But we're really talking about, are you in one of the schools that it's in the top half in terms of matching? And again, it's kind of difficult to see what that really is. You have to kind of do a double calculation, which is, all right, well, what were the chances I get an interview? And then what are the chances after that interview that I actually get the residency? So to bring this home, my second point is the soccer analogy. There's two really kind of distinctive, at least at the 9 and 10-year-old level, or 8 and 9-year-olds, which is called 9U and 10U, so under 9, under 10. And there's recreational league, which is meant for those that want to play soccer, have fun, but may not make it their primary sport. So maybe they're in softball or gymnastics, and they just want to do soccer for fun with their friends. The other side is the academy, which is a little bit more competitive. And what the difference is really more the commitment, and that they're committed to going more. So both of them are not selective. If anyone applies to academy, they all get in. It's not select yet. And so it's just a different environment. So when you're going into rec, you're training at a different level. You're only training probably 2 days a week. It's a parent coach. And, we did really well when we did rec last fall. We had a great time. And I kind of realized that there's a limit to where I could get them and what things that I needed to teach them. And I would say that about half of Pharmacy Nation is in this kind of rec group where they are just in an environment that they think they're doing great, but the competition is just not really there. Maybe students were accepted at 80, 90%. And maybe even higher, because the average to get into pharmacy school these days is a little over 83%. And so they are doing well and they're getting A's, but they're getting A's against a different level of competition. The other group is the academy, and I hate this kind of misconception that it has to do with class and one is elite and one is not and one is better and one is worse. It's just really more of a situation where you've got someone that's going to go to practice 3 to 4 days a week instead of making it 1 to 2 days a week. And you're going to have coaches that are setting a curriculum that comes from decades of experience, quite literally. And although parents are involved, our involvement is very different. We too are the students, and we are really an extension of that coach. And so I don't go into game day on Saturday and say, okay, well, I've got this great idea for what we're going to do today. We've already talked about the things that we want to do, and I'm just trying to do as good a job as I can at not necessarily replicating, but certainly extending the teachings that the master coach, I guess you could say, I don't think that's really a good term, really the director coach is going to do. And it really is, everyone attacks, everyone defends. We don't let the ball even get off of their foot. So we go right at the person instead of running back to the goal and waiting. And little by little, these things kind of take hold. We have different ways of communication. We don't yell the person's name. We say, we want a square ball, which means that we're square to the goal, or we want a through ball that's going to go through a gap in 2 players, or we provide good communication to somebody who's maybe got a breakaway. You've got space. By saying space, you're saying you've got no one near you. Or you've got man on, where you've got 2 people on you, and here I'm available to help you. Or support, I'm behind you, I can help you. And so those are the 2 areas. So if you're in the bottom 50%, that's not your fault. You went into pharmacy school, maybe it was the closest pharmacy school, maybe you had friends there, whatever it was that made you go there. But you're going to find out that you're unfortunately at a rec pharmacy school. And then others of you are like, I did not realize this. I'm at an academy pharmacy school. And maybe your grades were a little bit lower, but you were on the bottom end and you got in anyway. And you've been competing at such a high level that you've actually grown quite a bit as you've gone through it. And so what do we do to become residency competitive? And I think that residency competitive is really knowing what to do very quickly in some very difficult situations. And I have this great analogy where we had 2 goalies. It was like the tale of 2 goalies, really, first half and second half. And we play 7-on-7. And so generally, one goalie will be there in the first half and a completely different person will be there in the second half. And so in the first half, there was just this outstanding goalie who was just stopping everything and making really, really good decisions. And it was clear that this goalie had extra coaching outside. And in residency, that's getting help with CVs, LOIs, and interviews and things like that. Now, this was still a person that maybe was at a lower level of training in this recreational atmosphere, but you could tell that there was nothing getting past this person. And the only reason that there was the goal was because of penalty, that someone had committed a foul and, they got to put their best shooter on, and penalties are extremely tough to block. And there's just a height thing where the poor kid just simply cannot reach that high. So it was nothing to do with their ability. It was just simply the physical situation where they just couldn't reach high enough to block that goal. And in the second half, we'll call this the gold and the silver team. So the gold team is the one that has this goalie, and then the silver team is the one that had that great goalie, and then the gold team is going to be the one that attacks. So in the second half, there's a different goalie, and that's common. The kid wants to play other positions, and this goalie, the gold team coach saw that the goalie change was going to be significant, and they tried something that won them the game and absolutely just blew open the game. It was 1-1 at the half, and then it ended up being like 7-1 at the end, or 8-1. I don't even know. And this is what happened. So in this 7v7 kind of learning environment, there's something called a build out line. And what it is that once the goalie gets the ball, the offense or the other team has to back up to the midfield stripe. And they do that so that they can practice passing and kind of getting the ball up the field. But what happened was those 4 forwards, the coach had put in 4 quickest players, and they were just on a sprint blitz to as soon as that ball was kicked. And what would happen was the person that got the ball is seeing these 4 kids running really fast at them and would try to get through them. And this was just not going to work. Those 2 to 4 players were running full speed. They would take the ball away, get a shot on goal, and this happened again and again. And it was just so disheartening because I was sitting there like, okay, well, why isn't the coach helping? Why isn't the coach getting in there? And maybe the coach wanted them to try to figure it out for themselves. But what I think it was more of is that the solution to the problem is unconventional to most people that watch maybe recreational ball. And the solution is to actually pass it right back with one touch to the goalie who sent it to you. Now, the goalie isn't allowed to pick it up. You're not allowed to pass back to the goalie for them to use their hands, but you pass back to the goalie, and then the goalie will pass it over to the other defender way on the other side of the field. And though now those 4 forwards are on the wrong side of the field, they've overrun the play, and now you can have a great counterattack. But it's so ingrained in that person, that poor kid, that you always move forward. You never kick to the middle. You never kick at your own goal. And that's just not true. But you go to any youth soccer game and you'll always hear, not the middle, or, kick it. Of course you're supposed to kick it. You know those things. And the difference between those 2 goalies was that one goalie was talking to their defenders, telling them what to do, and then the other goalie was too nervous, or maybe the person that was getting it, the right back, was just not able to make that touch pass. And so this is the difference between being someone who's going to be qualified for residency and someone who isn't. That first goalie has been trained in, say, okay, well, if this happens and I've got all of this stress and all of these things coming at me at once, those 4 forwards coming at me at once, just kick it right back to me. Don't you worry. I'm going to handle that ball and I'm going to clear it and get it out of this space. Your job as a defender is just get right back to me. And there was a lot of comfort, good relationship there. On the other side, it just wasn't there. And maybe the coach didn't make the adjustment because it was just the person just like wouldn't do it, just wouldn't respond to it. So as you're kind of thinking about this, you want to start thinking, okay, well, which goalie am I? And it's really more of which environment are you in? Are you someone who's in a lower half school that has lower half scores in terms of getting the interview, getting the residency? Well, you're going to need extra help. You might feel like you were doing really well, but no one's put that kind of 4-person pressure on you where you're going to have to make these quick decisions and do something that is against what a lot of people are saying. Okay. Some people are saying, no, you can do it. You just create your CV on your own, your LOI on your own. You'll be fine with the interview. But you haven't been in that environment where you've got these other people that are competing that are just at such a high level. The other thing that you're going to really want to think about is, if you are in that upper level, okay, well, within that upper level, have you been challenged? Maybe some of your APPEs have been canceled. Maybe some of your APPEs have become those ones that, and I don't want to say they're not as difficult. I'm just going to say they're not as clinical. because when you get to that residency, those residents are going to expect you to talk the talk. And if you haven't had that general medicine, internal medicine, and then if you're going for something like, ID, critical care, ambulatory care, if you don't have those experiences, it's going to be a complete disaster in that interview because you're not going to know how to have that conversation. So again, being residency competitive comes down to a single sentence. Knowing that sometimes when you are competing for a position, that the open door that's available to you, that the best decision is probably going to be a little bit unconventional. And that's getting outside help with these, LOIs and CVs and interviews and all of those things. And many of you are like, well, look, I paid $200,000. Shouldn't I get this? Yeah, of course you should. But they can't elevate all of your classmates because they've allowed them in at a certain level. And the environment just wasn't there for that kind of competitive atmosphere. So being residency competitive is knowing where to find that open door, knowing that, it might be a pass back to the goalie, which goes against the screaming parents, which goes against what is conventional to most people. But that is what a professional does. A professional soccer player seeing 4 people attacking would not try to cut through it unless they're Lionel Messi. They would go backwards to the goalie. The goalie would just send it to the other side of the field. And then those 4 players would completely overrun the play. And now we've got this great counter. So again, I'm here to help you. Whether you want to work with me or not, there are many resources at residencyhelp.com and residency.teachable.com. I want you to succeed no matter where you are. But again, this idea that just because you paid X amount of dollars that you are at the Harvard of pharmacy school is absolutely not true. There is very little between how much you had to pay and what you're going to get out of it. It just doesn't always work that way because some schools are supported by states and some schools are not. But make sure that you are truly residency competitive by making sure that you are able to work at the highest level. So again, if you need to contact me, TonyThePharmacist at gmail.com or residencyhelp.com. Have a good weekend.